Hi, my name is Ayushi Rustogi. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in the Delft University of Technology, Netherlands. My research interest is in the human aspects of software engineering, and particularly I try to improve developer productivity and add support for diversity and inclusion. As a software engineering researcher, software and its interaction with people are at the heart of my research. As with many other researchers who have been trying to improve developer productivity, diversity and inclusion, and everything else that relates to the health of the software and the community surrounding it, we often look at the factors which influence it, whether it's the ecosystem, the tools and technology, and governance. Today, we have bits and pieces of information available as different research papers, some of which are contributed by the people present here. And my aim is to collect these bits and pieces of information and generate a theory which collectively tells the overall and the big picture of how the software changes. I envision that this theory can help those people who are trying to improve the quality or the health of the community in understanding what are the potential sources of variabilities, but also the solution spaces that exist. It is also useful for anyone who is studying some or more aspects of these factors influencing software change. Today, I'm going to talk about a process theory, and this work is done in collaboration with Georgios. So before I start, let me describe what is process theory. Process theory explains how an entity changes and develops. And just to make things clearer, a process theory explains how something happens. It does not prescribe the best practices or the things which go wrong. It merely provides a general description without describing the specific interactions in which things work. Now I'll briefly tell you about the method we use. We started by defining the scope of this research, which we defined as the collaborative development model. Within that, we chose pull-based development model, and specifically in the context of GitHub. So even though as we are specializing with each layer, we hope that in future this theory can be generalized and be applicable to different other development models that are widely used today. Our next step is to gather evidence and identify relations among them. We do so in 3 steps. First, we build an initial theory based on the practical experience. What we mean by practical experience, we will explain next. Then we add more evidence to our theory based on the scientific literature available and revise it with insights from the scientific community. So for the practical experience, we looked at the primary source of information, which is the GitHub website. We not only looked at their website, but also their official documentations and survey reports. Although we did refrain from using the white papers, the blogs, or the webcast, as we feel that these informations present opinion and not the evidences necessarily. Next, to confirm our findings, we also looked at some broader but related resources such as open source guides as well as GHTorrent as a secondary source of information. Going in more details, we selected some projects and looked at their available documentation to see how these projects function or how at least they describe their functioning to be. Next, we built on the scientific literature. We selected papers which are related to software engineering and uses the term pull-based or pull request to select all the papers which uses this development model within the context of GitHub. Our search gave us approximately 1,200 papers, out of which more than 200 papers relate and are important for building this theory of software change. So far, we have crossed 150 papers, and as a result of it, we have our initial theory, which we present next. But before we present our theory, let me introduce you to the terminology we use in this paper. We have a development model, which in this case is GitHub, which comprises of some unit changes. There is a code base, there are some people who are, it's maybe the users or the contributors or maintainers who are participating on it. There is a governing body which decides the code of conduct, the practices, or the vision of the project, and then there are some tools and technologies that enable it. Our fundamental unit of analysis is a project, which is a part of the broader ecosystem, which comprises of many other projects of the kind. Also, we have another ecosystem which is made of development related platforms. So it consists of platforms such as Stack Overflow or Reddit, which consist of some information relating to the development activities and has the potential to influence the software change. So this is our initial theory, which explains software change in terms of 6 entities. And these entities are the unit change. So unit change, we are using it as in simpler terms, you can refer it to as pull request or patches. But what we mean is the one change that a developer is proposing for inclusion into the existing base. And as obvious, we have an existing code base for which these changes are proposed. Our third entity is a community, which is comprising of the different stakeholders, the contributors, the maintainers who are enabling the software change to happen. There is a governance structure which describes the vision of the project, its code of conduct, and other entities. We have tools and technology which are enabling this change, and the ecosystem which can be defined at many levels, whether it is project, organization, latent community, development ecosystem, or development related ecosystems. So this is the picture you see here is one of the initial drafts that we have been using to build our theory. It has evolved since then, but this is to merely give you a sense of how this theory is emerging to be. And finally, we have some relations describing how these different entities interact with each other and how they influence the software change. So while presenting all their interactions with each other is hard, in this particular slide, I'm describing how the 6 entities that we have identified influences software change. So going clockwise from the top, a unit change triggers a software change, which works in the context of the code base C. The D, which is a representation of the community, acts on these available changes, whether it's in the form of contributing to it or maybe reviewing the proposed changes. Governance defines how the software change should function, which is in turn implemented by the tools and technology. And similar to the code base, the ecosystem also provides a broader context within which the software change should happen. So these are the insights which we have derived not just from the practical experience but also based on the scientific literature. Although this is one of the relations, there are many other factors. There are several other relations that exist among these entities, but in the interest of time are not discussed here. Now moving on next, the third step where we want to revise and make our resulting theory strong. And this is where we need your support. So we have our initial theories in place, built on 150 papers and tons of articles read from different sources. We would appreciate if some of you can spend some time and based on your understanding of the field and the scientific experience, and it does not include the opinion, can critique on our theory, that do they agree or disagree to some parts or which parts of a theory, but can also help us explore if there are some parts of these relations which we have systematically missed, either in interpretation as a result of researcher bias, or we did not find sufficient evidence in the scientific articles. So we would solicit your participation in two ways. Either we can have a short chat soon after this presentation where you can critically reflect on the theories that we have presented, or you can also help me by participating in a survey. This survey will be made available to those who are interested and willing to help. So we have two kinds of questions, just to give you a sense of what we have. The first question relates to our initial theory. The first two questions relate to our initial theory, soliciting your opinion, your expertise on that we show X, which is an entity or a characteristic of an entity, influences software change. Do you agree? And if you disagree, why is it so? Also, we look forward to your expertise to understand if there are any influences which are already not captured in our current theory, and what these factors are. Likewise, for the final theory, where we are describing the relations among different entities, we would like, similar to the previous initial theory, we would like to understand to what extent do you agree or disagree, and what is the reason, and if we have systematically missed on any relations. For more insights, please see the YouTube description box. I have provided a link to the latest version of the theories that we have. I will very much appreciate if we can have a one-on-one chat discussing how this theory can be made stronger and how we together can build a better theory of software change. Thank you so much.